He wasn't supposed to have a future. Not anymore. The night had already made that decision for him. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Somewhere warm, I hope. Because out here, the cold doesn't just touch your skin, it settles into your bones. The kind of cold that reminds you what you've lost. Ethan Cole walks down a dim roadside with everything he owns packed into a worn duffel slung over his shoulder, the zipper half broken, the fabric stiff from years of use. The wind cuts across the empty highway in long, hollow breaths, carrying the faint scent of diesel and old rain. Streetlights flicker overhead, casting weak halos on cracked asphalt, as if even the light itself is too tired to stay. Beside him, moving in steady silence, is Rex, a German shepherd with a sable coat dulled by dust and time, his amber eyes scanning every shadow like they still matter. Ethan's boots scrape against gravel, slow and uneven, not from injury, but from exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep. Just hours ago, he stood in a doorway that no longer belonged to him, listening to a voice tell him it was over, that rent was overdue, that sympathy had an expiration date. He didn't argue. Marines are trained to leave when the mission ends. But no one trains you for what comes after. Now, all he has left is $5 folded in his pocket, soft at the edges from being held too many times, and a pair of cold dog tags resting against his chest beneath his jacket. The metal taps lightly with each step, a quiet rhythm that sounds almost like memory. Rex slows for a moment, his nose catching something in the air, ears twitching as if the world still has something to say. Ethan notices, pauses, and follows the dog's gaze. Across the road, barely visible through the dim glow of a failing neon sign, stands a diner. It leans slightly to one side like it's tired of standing at all, windows clouded with dust, a door hanging just enough off its hinge to creak when the wind pushes through. The sign above it buzzes faintly, flickering between letters that no longer fully form a word. For a second, Ethan considers walking past it. There's nothing there for him. Nothing anywhere. Really. But Rex doesn't move. He stands still, watching, waiting. And in that silence, something shifts. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough. Ethan exhales slowly, the breath visible in the cold air, and reaches into his pocket, fingers brushing against that last crumpled bill. $5. Not enough for a room. Not enough for a meal. Not enough for anything that makes sense. But sometimes, what doesn't make sense is the only thing left. He looks at Rex, the dog's eyes steady, unblinking, as if he already knows what comes next. Ethan gives a small nod, more to himself than anything else, and steps off the road toward the diner, the gravel crunching underfoot like the start of something no one would ever expect. The door gives a tired groan as Ethan pushes it open, the sound stretching through the empty diner like it has been waiting years to be heard again, and for a moment neither he nor Rex moves, as if stepping inside might wake something that prefers to stay forgotten. The air within is colder than outside, stale with the scent of old grease, rusted metal, and time itself. A thin layer of dust coats every surface, softening the edges of cracked vinyl booths and a long counter that once held laughter and late-night conversations. The faint hum of the flickering neon sign outside leaks through the walls in uneven pulses, like a heartbeat that refuses to fully stop. Ethan exhales slowly, his breath visible again, and takes one step forward, then another, boots echoing softly against worn tile. Rex follows close, his paws silent, but his presence steady, grounded, real, the kind of presence that does not ask questions, only stays. Ethan sets his duffel down near the counter, the fabric slumping as if relieved to finally rest, and for a brief second he just stands there, looking at nothing and everything at once. This place is broken, forgotten, worth less than the $5 in his pocket, and yet it feels, still, like a room holding its breath, waiting to see who he will be inside it. Rex moves ahead, nose low, tracing invisible paths across the floor, past overturned stools and a coffee machine that has not brewed in years. His ears twitch once, then again, catching something deeper than sound. Ethan notices the shift, the way Rex slows near the back of the diner, near the kitchen door that hangs slightly open, swaying just enough to tap against the frame when the wind sneaks in through unseen cracks. "What is it, boy?" Ethan murmurs, his voice rough but quiet, the kind of voice that does not expect an answer. Rex does not look back. He nudges the door with his nose and slips through, disappearing into the darker space beyond. Ethan hesitates for half a second, then follows. The kitchen is narrower than he expected, metal counters lined with forgotten utensils, a faint metallic smell lingering in the air. Somewhere a loose pipe ticks softly as it cools, counting seconds no one else hears. Rex is already at the far end, standing over a section of the floor where the tiles look slightly different, worn in a pattern that does not match the rest, his tail still, his body alert but not tense, and then he does something he has not done all night. He paws at the ground, once, twice, a quiet scrape that cuts through the silence. Ethan steps closer, kneeling beside him, running his hand across the tile. It is colder here, uneven at the edges. Like something was placed and then forgotten. He presses down gently, and one corner shifts just enough to confirm what his instincts are beginning to say. Rex lets out a low breath, not a growl, not a warning, just acknowledgement. Ethan leans back slightly, glancing around the empty kitchen as if expecting someone to tell him to stop, but there is no one, only the faint hum, the ticking pipe, and the steady presence of the dog beside him. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a small worn key from his duffel, not meant for this, but enough to pry at the loosened edge. The tile lifts with resistance, then gives way, revealing darkness beneath, not deep, but hidden, a small compartment carved into the foundation, and inside, barely visible in the dim light, is the edge of something metal, old, deliberate, placed there by hands that had something to protect or something to remember. Ethan freezes, not out of fear, but because for the first time that night, something in his chest shifts from emptiness to something else, something quieter, sharper, like the beginning of a question he does not yet know how to ask. Rex sits beside him now, calm, watchful, as if this was the place they were always meant to find, and in the silence of that abandoned diner, with cold air pressing in and dust hanging still in the faint light, Ethan Cole realizes that maybe this place was never just something left behind. Maybe it was something waiting. The metal box is heavier than it looks, its surface cold and rough against Ethan's hands as he lifts it from the hidden compartment, dust falling in thin streams back into the darkness below, and for a moment he just holds it there, suspended between what was buried and what is about to be uncovered. Rex leans closer, nose brushing the edge, not impatient, not restless, just present, as if this moment belongs to both of them. Ethan sets the box gently on the kitchen floor, the faint scrape echoing softly, and runs his fingers along the lid. There is no lock, only a thin seam where time has sealed it shut. He hesitates, not because he is afraid of what is inside, but because opening it means something will change, and change has not been kind to him lately. The wind outside presses faintly against the diner walls, a low hum wrapping around the silence, and then he exhales, steady, controlled, the way he was trained, and lifts the lid. It resists for a second, then gives with a quiet pop, the kind of sound that feels louder than it is. Inside, the first thing he notices is not money, not anything shining or dramatic, but paper, carefully stacked, aged at the edges, bound together with a worn leather strap. Beneath it rests a small tin container, and beside that, something else, a photograph. Ethan picks it up slowly, brushing away a thin layer of dust. The image comes into focus under the dim light. A man stands in front of this very diner, younger, wearing a Marine uniform, posture straight, expression calm, the kind of calm that comes from carrying more than you say, and beside him, sitting proud and alert, is a German shepherd, almost identical to Rex, same strong build, same watchful eyes. Ethan feels something tighten in his chest, not pain, not quite recognition, but something close, like a memory that does not belong to him. He turns the photo slightly, and on the back, written in faded ink, are a few simple words, "For the one who stays." Ethan reads it under his breath, the words barely louder than the air around him. Rex shifts slightly, his tail brushing against the floor once, as if he understands more than he should. Ethan sets the photo down carefully and reaches for the stack of papers. Unfolding the top page, the handwriting is steady, deliberate, each line placed with intention, not rushed, not careless. It is a letter, not legal at first glance, more personal, like something written when there was no one left to speak to. He scans the first few lines, and the voice on the page feels familiar, not because he knows the man, but because he knows the tone, the quiet weight behind it, a man who had lost something, maybe everything, and still chose to leave something behind, not for anyone specific, but for someone who might understand. Ethan flips through a few pages, catching fragments, mentions of long nights, empty booths, the dog that never left his side, the promise to keep the place open even when no one came, and then something else, a line that makes him pause. If you are reading this, it means you did not walk away. Ethan stops, the words settling into him slowly. Rex sits beside him now, close enough that their shoulders almost touch, the dog's warmth grounding him in a way nothing else has all night. Ethan glances toward the front of the diner, the empty booths, the silent counter, the flickering light, and for the first time, it does not feel like a place abandoned, it feels like a place tested, waiting to see who would remain when there was nothing left to gain. He looks back at the letter, then at the photograph, then at Rex, and something shifts again, quieter this time, deeper. Not hope exactly, but the beginning of it, fragile, steady. Real, like a small light that does not demand attention, only asks to be kept. And in that dim, forgotten kitchen, with dust in the air and the past laid open in his hands, Ethan Cole realizes that maybe this diner was never meant to be saved by money, maybe it was meant to be found by someone who understood what it meant to stay. The paper trembles slightly in Ethan's hand, not from fear, but from the quiet weight of what it carries, the kind of weight that does not shout but settles deep, and as he reads further, the words begin to feel less like something written and more like something remembered. The letter speaks of mornings that came too early and nights that stayed too long, of coffee poured for empty seats, of a man who once believed this place would be filled with voices but learned instead how to sit with silence, and yet he stayed, not because it made sense, but because leaving would have meant forgetting who he was. Ethan lowers the paper for a moment, his eyes drifting across the kitchen, the worn counters, the quiet corners, the faint marks left behind by years of use, and suddenly it is not just a diner anymore, it is a story paused mid-sentence, waiting for someone to finish it. Rex shifts again, rising to his feet and walking slowly toward the doorway that leads back to the main room. He pauses there, looking over his shoulder just once, not urging, not commanding, just inviting. Ethan folds the letter carefully, placing it back into the box along with the photograph, leaving the tin container unopened for now, as if some things deserve to wait. Then he stands, his joints stiff but steady, and follows Rex out into the dining area. The space feels different now, not brighter, not warmer, but understood, like seeing something clearly for the first time after walking past it for years. The booths sit quietly along the walls, their surfaces cracked but intact. The counter stretches ahead, lined with stools that have not held anyone in a long time. Ethan moves behind it, placing his hands on the edge. The wood is worn smooth in places, rough in others, shaped by countless hands before his, and he can almost hear it, not actual voices, but the echo of them, laughter, conversation, the low hum of a place that once mattered. Rex jumps lightly onto one of the stools, settling there with calm certainty, his gaze fixed on Ethan as if waiting to see what he will do next. And for the first time in a long while, Ethan does not feel like he is waiting for something to end. He feels like he is standing at the beginning of something, uncertain, yes, but not empty. He reaches into his pocket again, pulling out the $5 bill, unfolding it slowly, smoothing the creases with his thumb. It looks even smaller here, almost insignificant against the weight of everything else. But he sets it down on the counter anyway, placing it flat, deliberate, like a marker, like a promise. The neon light outside flickers again, casting a faint glow through the front windows, enough to outline the shape of the room, enough to remind him that the world is still there, still moving, even if this place has been still for a while. Ethan glances back toward the kitchen, toward the hidden compartment now closed again, and something about it feels less like a secret and more like a foundation, something built to hold, not to hide. Rex lets out a quiet breath, resting his head on the counter, his presence steady as ever, and Ethan nods once, a small motion, but certain. He turns and walks toward the front door. The hinges creak again as he pushes it open, the cold night air rushing in to meet him, carrying with it the same scent of diesel and distance. But it feels different now, less like an ending, more like a challenge. He steps outside, looks up at the broken sign buzzing faintly above, then reaches up, brushing away a layer of dust from one of the letters, revealing just enough to read a fragment of the name that used to shine there. And in that quiet, flickering light, with Rex standing just inside the doorway watching him. Ethan Cole makes a decision that does not come from logic or necessity, but from something simpler, something older. He decides to stay. Morning does not arrive all at once, it seeps in slowly through the dusty windows, pale light stretching across the diner floor in thin, uncertain lines, and for a moment the place looks almost awake, as if it remembers what daylight used to feel like. Ethan stands behind the counter where he had left himself the night before, one hand resting on the worn wood, the other wrapped loosely around a chipped ceramic mug he found in the back. It is empty, but he holds it anyway, not out of habit, but out of memory. Rex lies near the entrance, his body curled but his ears alert, watching the door as if expecting the world to test them again. The silence is different now, not heavy, not hollow, just quiet, the kind that leaves room for something new. Ethan exhales slowly and sets the mug down, his gaze drifting across the room, and instead of seeing what is broken, he begins to see what could be fixed: a chair that only needs tightening, a window that could be cleaned, a counter that still stands strong beneath the dust. Nothing grand, nothing impossible, just small things, manageable things. He moves from behind the counter, stepping into the open space, his boots lighter against the tile, less like he is passing through and more like he belongs. Rex rises immediately, falling into step beside him without a sound. They move together through the diner, checking corners, testing doors, the quiet rhythm of two beings who do not need words to understand each other. Ethan pushes open the back door, the hinges complaining softly, and steps into the narrow lot behind the building. The morning air is crisp, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant traffic. A rusted dumpster leans against a cracked fence, weeds pushing through the edges of the pavement, but even here, there is space, potential, a place that has not given up entirely. He walks a few steps out, then turns back to look at the diner from the outside. The structure stands tired but upright, like something that has endured more than it was built for. Rex moves ahead, sniffing along the edges of the building, his tail steady, his focus calm, and then he pauses near the back wall, nose close to the ground, as if tracing a path left behind long ago. Ethan watches him for a moment, then nods slightly, not questioning, just accepting. When they step back inside, the light has grown stronger, filling more of the room, softening the shadows. Ethan returns to the counter and reaches for the small tin container he had left unopened. His fingers linger on the lid for a second, then he lifts it. Inside are not valuables, not money, but something quieter, a set of old keys, worn smooth from years of use, and beneath them, a folded piece of paper, smaller than the others, more deliberate. He opens it carefully, the ink faded but still readable, a list, simple, practical, supplies, repairs, notes written in a hand that expected someone else might continue what was started. Ethan reads each line slowly, taking it in, not as instructions, but as a conversation across time. And for the first time since stepping into this place, he feels something steady settle inside him, not urgency, not pressure, just direction. Rex comes to rest beside him again, his presence constant, grounding. Ethan closes the tin, placing it gently on the counter next to the $5 bill. Two small things, both carrying more weight than they should. He looks around once more, the light, the space, the silence, and then he rolls up his sleeves. A simple motion, almost automatic, but full of meaning. Because this time, he is not preparing for a mission that will end, he is choosing one that might not. He picks up a rag from beneath the counter, worn but usable, and begins with the nearest surface, wiping away a thin layer of dust. The cloth leaves a clean line behind, small, but real. And in that moment, with Rex watching quietly and the morning light settling into the corners of the room, Ethan Cole does not feel like a man who has lost everything. He feels like a man who has finally found something worth staying for. By midday the light has changed, no longer pale and hesitant but steady, filling the diner with a quiet warmth that reveals every detail Ethan had missed in the dark. The thin cracks along the counter, the faded patterns in the floor tiles, the small scratches that tell stories no one wrote down, and Ethan moves through it all with a rhythm that feels almost familiar, not rushed, not forced, just steady. The rag in his hand glides across surfaces that have not been touched in years, leaving behind clean paths that catch the light differently. Small victories, barely noticeable from a distance, but undeniable up close. Rex stays near, sometimes watching, sometimes moving ahead as if inspecting each space before Ethan reaches it. his nose brushing along corners, under tables, near the base of the walls, and every so often he pauses, listening to something beyond human hearing, then continues, as if confirming that nothing here is broken beyond repair. Ethan steps into the kitchen again, rolling his shoulders slightly, the quiet ache in his muscles not unwelcome. Just a reminder that he is still moving, still doing something that matters. He opens cabinets. One by one, checking what remains. Most are empty, some hold rusted utensils, a few contain items left behind in a hurry or forgotten entirely, a stack of plates, chipped but usable, a pan that still holds its shape, and then, near the far end, a small refrigerator, its surface dull and worn. He hesitates before opening it, not expecting much, but when the door creaks open, he finds it empty, clean in a strange way, as if someone had made sure it would be ready for whoever came next. He closes it gently, nodding once, a quiet acknowledgement of the care that had once existed here. Rex lets out a soft huff from behind him, drawing Ethan's attention toward the back door again. The dog stands there, posture calm but focused, looking outward, not at something immediate, but at something approaching. Ethan steps closer, pushing the door open just enough to see the narrow lot behind the diner. The sunlight is stronger now, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement, and beyond the fence, on the edge of the road, a figure stands, not moving, just watching. Ethan does not tense, does not retreat, he simply studies the distance. The man appears older, dressed in a worn jacket, hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed but deliberate, like someone who knows this place better than he should. Rex remains still, no growl, no warning, just awareness, the kind that trusts but verifies. The man lifts one hand slowly, not a wave exactly, more like a gesture of recognition, then begins to walk closer, his boots crunching softly against gravel as he approaches the back entrance. Ethan steps fully outside now, the air warm against his face, his stance steady, grounded, not defensive. Just present. When the man reaches the fence, he stops, resting one hand lightly on the metal, his eyes scanning the diner, then settling on Ethan. Thought nobody would come back here, he says, his voice low, not unfriendly, but carrying something deeper, something measured. Ethan does not answer right away. He glances once at Rex, who remains at his side, calm, then back at the man. I did, he replies simply. The words not meant to prove anything, just to state what is. The man studies him for a moment longer, then nods slowly, as if confirming something to himself. That place has been waiting, he says, almost to the air more than to Ethan, and for a second, the world feels still again, not empty, but aligned. The man steps back slightly, hands returning to his pockets. Not everyone sees it, he adds, then turns, walking away without another word, leaving only the sound of gravel and the faint hum of the road beyond. Ethan watches him go, not confused, not unsettled, just aware that this place carries more than walls and dust. He turns back toward the diner, the open door, the light spilling inside, and Rex moves first this time, stepping forward with quiet certainty, as if leading him back to where he now belongs, and Ethan follows, not because he has to, but because something inside him has already decided he will not walk away. The afternoon settles into a steady rhythm, the kind that does not rush or demand, but lingers long enough for small changes to take root. And inside the diner, those changes begin to show, the counter no longer dull with dust but carrying a faint sheen where Ethan has worked, the booths still worn but now defined, their shapes clearer under the light, and the air itself feels different, less stagnant, as if something invisible has been lifted. Ethan stands near the front window, a cloth in his hand, pausing for just a moment as he looks out at the road beyond. Cars pass now and then, not many, just enough to remind him that the world has not forgotten this stretch entirely. Rex lies near the door, his head resting on his paws, eyes half closed but alert, always alert, the kind of rest that is never careless. Ethan turns back inside, setting the cloth down, and walks toward the counter where the $5 bill still rests beside the small tin container, both exactly where he left them, unchanged, but not unnoticed. He picks up the list again, scanning the lines more carefully this time, not just reading, but considering. Supplies, repairs, small notes written in a hand that believed someone would understand their meaning, and Ethan does, not perfectly, not completely, but enough. He folds the paper once more and slips it into his pocket, a quiet decision forming without announcement. Rex rises then, stretching slowly, his paws pressing into the floor with quiet strength, and moves toward the front door, his ears lifting slightly as a new sound enters the space, not loud, not sudden, just unfamiliar. Ethan hears it too, the low hum of a vehicle slowing down outside, the tires crunching lightly against gravel before coming to a stop. Both man and dog turn toward the window, not with alarm, but with attention, the kind that comes from experience. Ethan steps closer to the glass, wiping a small clear patch with his sleeve, and sees an old pickup truck parked just beyond the faded sign, the engine idling softly, the driver still inside, hands resting on the steering wheel, unmoving, watching. Rex stands beside him now, posture calm but focused, his gaze fixed on the figure beyond the glass. Seconds pass, quiet and stretched, until the truck door opens with a soft creak, and a man steps out. Middle-aged, dressed plainly, his movements unhurried, as if he has all the time in the world. He looks at the diner first, not Ethan, his eyes tracing the outline of the building, the windows, the sign, taking it in like someone revisiting a place he once knew. Then he walks forward, each step measured, stopping just outside the door, his reflection faint in the glass. Ethan does not move to open it right away, not out of hesitation, but out of respect for the moment, for the quiet weight it carries. The man lifts his hand slowly and taps once on the door, a simple gesture, not demanding, just present. Rex glances up at Ethan briefly, then back at the man, no growl, no tension, only awareness. Ethan reaches for the handle and pulls the door open, the hinges sounding softer this time, less resistant, the air between them still, neither rushing to fill it. The man looks at Ethan with a calm expression, not surprised, not skeptical, just certain in a way that is hard to explain. "You stayed," he says, his voice low, carrying the same tone as the man from earlier, as if the words have been spoken before in different ways. Ethan nods once, simple, steady. "I did," he replies. The man's gaze shifts briefly to Rex, then back to Ethan, and something like approval passes through his expression, quiet but real. He steps just inside, glancing around the diner, taking in the changes, the cleaner surfaces, the subtle signs of effort, and he exhales slowly, as if something inside him has been waiting for this confirmation. "Then it is yours now," he says, not as a question, not as an offer, but as a truth that has already been decided. Ethan does not respond immediately, the words settling into him with the same quiet weight as the letter, as the photograph, as everything this place has begun to reveal. Rex moves closer, sitting beside him, steady as ever, and in that moment, standing in a diner that no one expected to matter, Ethan Cole realizes that sometimes ownership is not about what you buy, but about what you refuse to leave behind. The words linger in the air long after the man stops speaking, not loud, not dramatic, but final in a way that does not need repetition, and Ethan feels them settle somewhere deeper than thought, somewhere that recognizes truth before it understands it. He glances around the diner again, but this time through a different lens, not as a visitor, not as someone passing through, but as someone who has been seen by the place itself, accepted in a way that cannot be explained with ownership papers or money. The man steps further inside, his boots slow against the floor, his eyes moving across the counter, the booths, the faint lines where Ethan has begun to clean, and there is something in his expression that shifts, not surprise, but relief, as if he had come expecting to find the place unchanged and instead found something quietly alive. "He waited a long time," the man says after a moment, his voice softer now, not directed at Ethan, but at the space itself. Ethan does not ask who he means, because somehow, he already knows. The letter, the photograph, the list, all of it points to a man who refused to let go, even when there was nothing left to hold on to. Rex moves a step closer to the man, not cautious, not hesitant, just curious, his nose lifting slightly as if catching a familiar trace carried through time. The man looks down at him and gives a small nod, a gesture of recognition that passes without words. Then he reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out something small, a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. He places it gently on the counter beside the $5 bill and the tin container, aligning it carefully as if it belongs there. "Found this years ago," he says, "never knew who it was meant for." Ethan steps closer, his hand hovering above the paper for a second before he unfolds it. The handwriting matches the letter from before, steady, deliberate, unmistakable, and the message is short, only a few lines, but enough to shift everything. It speaks of the diner not as property, but as a place of second chances, a place meant for someone who had lost their way but still chose to stand, someone who would not walk away when things became quiet. Ethan reads it once, then again, each word settling deeper. Not as instruction, but as confirmation. Rex rests his head lightly against Ethan's leg, grounding him in the moment. The man watches them both, then steps back slightly, giving space. Most people passed right by, he adds, his tone calm. They saw what it was, not what it could be. Ethan folds the paper carefully, placing it back on the counter with the others, the small collection now forming something more than objects, more than memories, something like a foundation. He looks up at the man, meeting his gaze directly. And for a moment, no words are needed, because understanding has already taken place. The man nods once more, then turns toward the door, pausing briefly as his hand reaches for the handle. Take care of it, he says, not as a request, but as something entrusted, something already given. Then he steps outside, the afternoon light wrapping around him as he walks back toward his truck. The engine starts again after a moment, the low hum fading slowly as he drives away, leaving behind only the quiet and the soft echo of his words. Ethan stands still for a few seconds longer, the weight of everything settling into place, not overwhelming, not heavy, just certain. He reaches out and places his hand flat against the counter, feeling the solid wood beneath his palm, then glances down at Rex, who looks back with the same steady gaze, unchanged, unwavering, and Ethan nods slightly, not to the dog, not to the room, but to something within himself that has finally aligned. The light outside begins to shift again as afternoon leans toward evening, shadows stretching longer across the floor, but inside the diner, something holds steady, something that does not depend on time or circumstance. And for the first time since he was turned away from everything he knew, Ethan Cole does not feel like he is starting over. He feels like he has arrived exactly where he was meant to be. Evening arrives gently, not with noise or urgency, but with a quiet shift in the light that softens everything it touches. The diner now holds a different kind of stillness, not empty, not forgotten, but lived in. The front windows glow faintly as Ethan finishes wiping the last section of the counter, the cloth moving slower now, not because there is more work to do, but because there is less need to rush. Rex lies near the doorway again, but this time his body is stretched comfortably across the floor, his breathing even, his ears relaxed in a way they have not been since the night began. The small stack on the counter remains untouched for a moment, the $5 bill, the tin container, the folded notes, all resting side by side like pieces of a story finally told in full. Ethan walks toward the front door and steps outside once more, the air cooler now, carrying the faint hum of distant traffic and the soft whisper of wind moving through unseen trees. He looks up at the sign. Again, the letters still broken, still flickering, but no longer meaningless. He reaches up and adjusts one loose edge, a small action, barely noticeable, but enough to steady the light for a second longer, enough to make part of the name glow clearer than before. He steps back, studying it, not as something ruined, but as something in progress. Behind him, through the open door, the diner holds its quiet warmth, the faint light inside spilling outward just enough to meet the dark. Rex appears in the doorway, standing there with calm certainty, his silhouette framed by the glow, watching Ethan with the same steady gaze that has carried him through every moment. Ethan turns back inside, closing the door gently behind him, the hinges no longer protesting as loudly, as if even they have adjusted to the presence of someone who intends to stay. He moves behind the counter again, this time not to clean, but simply to stand, to take in the space as it is now, not perfect, not finished, but alive in a way it was not before. He picks up the photograph once more, studying the face of the man who came before him, the Marine who chose to stay when it would have been easier to leave, and for a moment, Ethan nods slightly, a silent acknowledgement passed across time. He sets the photograph down carefully, then reaches for the keys from the tin container, their metal cool and worn in his hand, not new, not polished, but ready. He turns toward the door behind the counter, the one that leads deeper into the building, and without hesitation he unlocks it, the soft click echoing quietly through the room, a sound that feels less like opening something new and more like continuing something that never truly ended. Rex moves to his side immediately, his presence as constant as ever, and together they step forward, not into uncertainty, but into something chosen, something claimed not by ownership, but by intention. The lights remain on behind them, casting a steady glow across the diner, visible through the front windows to anyone passing by, a quiet signal in the night, not calling out, not demanding attention, but simply there, and outside, the road continues as it always has, cars passing, people moving, most not noticing, but a few slowing. Just enough to see the light where there was once none, and inside, in a place that had waited longer than anyone realized, a man and his dog begin again, not with grand plans or promises, but with presence, with effort, with the simple, unspoken decision to remain, and sometimes, that is where the miracle begins.